Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Marriage Matters.
Hi, guys. How's everyone doing today?
So this is Glenn Coleman, and
I'm Tanya Coleman.
together we make There was a audio recording. I was sharing this with Tanya the other day that I was in my car, pretty much almost crying, by myself. Since, by the way, spoiler alert, today's show is we're talking about vulnerability and intimacy. So I'm about to be very vulnerable with you right now. But I was on my way from work, and when you get into your car, your Bluetooth automatically connects to your car, and I don't know why, but it played a voice memo. And this voice memo, they're probably gonna kill me for saying this, but the voice memo was Bethany and Bailey, and I mean,
which are our daughters.
Yeah, I'm sorry, which are our daughters, Bethany and Bailey. At the time, they must have been, because Bailey was barely talking, so she may have been one, if one.
Yeah,
and
then would make Bethany around 4.
About 4. But anyway, so
and today, guys, they're 12 and 14. Bailey turned 12 yesterday. Bethany is 14, going on 15.
So when I got in the car and Bluetooth connected and it started playing this voice memo, and it came on, she was like, "Hi, I'm Bailey," and I said, "Hi, I'm Bethany," and Bailey was like, "Hi, Bailey," and Bethany was like, "And together we make sisters."
Aww.
And so when we did our intro, that's what it kind of came to mind. But anyway, I teared up. I'm like, "Oh, my babies! They're 12 and 14 now."
Yes.
Anyway. Marriage
Matters.
Vulnerability.
That's all a part of it.
So this is Marriage Matters. This is the show where we discuss marriage matters because marriage matters. So that's what the show is all about. So we want to always give you practical tips, tools that you can use in your marriage, in your relationships. And that's what we're all about. We're all about creating a community of people who are doing life together.
Yeah, people that are connecting to one another and can relate and share information, share your ups, share your downs, show support to one another.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and get started. As you can notice, we're outside today.
Yes,
it's a beautiful day.
Summer day.
So if you hear any weird noises, it may be birds or
frogs.
Whatever, frogs. So we're outside in the backyard. So so today, like I said, we're talking about vulnerability and intimacy. So today we always like to recommend something that will, help you, that you can take and put into practice or put to work immediately after listening to this show. So today's recommendation is?
It is Brene Brown. It is actually her Netflix special entitled The Call to Courage. It is a wonderful talk, basically, that she's doing about being brave enough to be vulnerable and to be intimate as we interact with one another as human beings. One of the things that I personally appreciate about Brene Brown, she is very big on research. She's done like 20 plus years of research of people and our interactions with one another, how often people operate and function in shame, and how we struggle with being truly intimate and being vulnerable with one another, and basically just putting ourselves out there. And listening to her now for a couple of years, I've just learned, I've picked up a lot from her and from those discussions, and I'm really starting to grow as, with the work that I'm doing, learning to understand how important it is for us to be vulnerable and how at the same time it's so scary. People are really afraid to just be real and to be themselves. And so in marriage, not to move too far ahead, it's really important that we create that space for one another and we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and open with our spouses. And we'll get more into that shortly.
Okay. So again, that's Brene Brown.
Brene with a B. It's Brene Brown. The Netflix special again is entitled "The Call to Courage." I know we are believers, we are Christians. Brene does not. She does use some language sometimes in her communication, but she's brilliant. She's smart. And it's all good stuff. And I think sometimes we need to step outside of our circles and have some discussions. That's a part of being vulnerable.
Yep. So again, it's on Netflix. It's a Netflix special. It's called The Call to Courage. So I haven't watched it yet. Tanya watched it. So I'm gonna take our own recommendation and I'm gonna go and watch it with my wife.
honey.
She's probably gonna watch it again with me.
Yes.
So, and we're gonna just pull some tools from that and some things that we can use to be open and vulnerable and intimate with each other.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that I like to always say is, you know, we talk to a lot of couples and they always bring up the word communication. Well, I think a big part of communication is being vulnerable.
Yes.
So I always say communication consists of, or it has to be done often, openly, honestly about everything.
Yes.
And so that honestly and openness, I think, it goes to vulnerability. So that's today's topic: vulnerability and intimacy. So let's get into it. So
let's go.
So what I did was I started with a definition.
Okay, I love
So,
definitions. I am such a geek. I'm a nerd.
Well, yeah, you know, I guess we're just two nerds in a pod, whatever. Two nerds in a pod, you get it? It's like a podcast. See, that in itself was nerdy, huh? Anyway.
It's we're being very vulnerable and open to it.
Anyway, so vulnerable. Here's the first. Is three definitions. It says capable of being physically or emotionally wounded. And when I read that, I was like, whoa, that's kind of negative, right? You know, it's kind of negative. And then there's another one, open to attack or damage. Okay, so yeah, that last definition.
It's the first one, I
but
think.
capable of being physically or emotionally wounded.
Yeah.
And you know, when I said that, I said that's kind of negative, isn't it? And Tanya was like, well, that's what vulnerability is. It's really opening up yourself for whatever. And you said the reason why most people don't want to be vulnerable is because of the risk. Is that the risk that you take?
Yes, it's very
in
risky.
being physically or emotionally wounded.
And so when I think for me personally, what this mindset and thought is doing for me, because I'm still learning and researching and growing in this myself, is that for so long I have been very presenting what I feel like people want to see. And that's not very risky at all, because I'm just fitting right into whatever their mold is. That's not what God has called me to do. That's not who He created me to be. You know, and in order to really live in liberty and to really live free, I have to be who God has created me to be. And sometimes that's going to put me at risk at other people's judgment, other people's criticism, other people's thoughts and words about me. But being secure in who I am in Christ, none of that matters. As long as He is pleased, then I'm good. You know, so learning to be vulnerable and open and to share, because I feel like when I share, especially sharing some of my challenges and some of my struggles with other people, the goal is to help them. You know, that I am helping them come out of whatever it is that they're dealing with. When I have gotten to a certain level in my process in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I mean, let's bring that into marriage. You know, how does vulnerability, you know, even so, I guess what you're saying, let's take that statement you made
into marriage
about how did you say that? You said being not you're being who people expect you to be,
right,
and not being who you truly are,
right,
because you're afraid that maybe your spouse won't accept who you truly are, or you're not being who you truly are because you have outside people telling you
what you should be, and so you're trying to meet their expectations in your marriage,
Okay.
which is damaging.
Okay. And I'm trying to remember. There was a conversation we were having with someone, and we were just telling them, they it was something that was going on in their marriage, and they didn't basically, for lack of better words, they didn't like what was happening, and it wasn't like something that was just totally bad, but it was just some things that were being done, and it was frustrating one of the
spouses.
And the spouse was like, I don't want to say anything because I want to keep the peace.
Right.
I want to keep the peace.
People do that,
and I don't want to. If they knew what I was actually thinking,
right.
I don't know how they would
how they would respond to it, how they would feel about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, what I told them is like, it's very important that you are open and honest, because that's a frustrating thing, to be feeling a certain way on inside and having to act totally different.
Right.
And I'm the type of person, I like to be me all the time, every day. Because I don't like the way that makes me feel when I feel a certain way and I think a certain thing, and I am not at liberty to say that.
Right.
And I have to put on. I'm all about authenticity, and that's not being my true authentic self.
Right. Right. And so when you said that about the spouse not saying how they really feel about something because they want to keep the peace, or they don't want to rock the boat, so to speak, then what that does, and after a long period of time of doing that, or for some people a shorter period of time, then that's going to begin to put up walls, and you're going to live with offense in your heart. Your spouse may not even know what's going on with you. Then you're creating distance in space, and you're not building intimacy. Now you are basically destructing any intimacy that you already have, because you're not being truthful, and you're not being honest about how you feel, and that is going to tear down the oneness.
So you said a word there, intimacy. So that's, I think, what a lot of couples are striving for is intimacy, on all levels, whether
Right.
that's emotionally, physically, sexually, intimacy. Would you say it's impossible to reach a true level of intimacy without vulnerability?
Absolutely.
So you're
Yes.
saying absolutely
You cannot reach a true level of spiritual and emotional intimacy with a person that you are doing life with without being vulnerable.
okay.
We have to learn to take that chance. And oftentimes people will enter marriages and they're not being vulnerable at all. They are coming in, like I said, presenting something that they feel like that spouse expects, and or they are, I'm going to see if they meet my expectations. And so when that doesn't happen, then that's when people start talking divorce. And for me, vulnerability, and I used the term previously, vulnerability and intimacy are a dynamite couple. Because when you're able to be vulnerable and you're able to be intimate with your spouse, it goes right back to Genesis in the Bible when it talked about Adam and Eve were naked and they were unashamed. And we're going to read that scripture. It goes right back to that. There was nothing in between them. There were no secrets. There were no lies. There was no deception. They were open to one another. And that was God's best for them. Now we have recreated and restructured something that's not God's best.
Yeah. And so we go through life, or go through our marriage, never really getting to know our true spouse.
Right.
And I know for me, when you talk about being vulnerable, and talking about living up to that expectation, as a man, I always say, we're taught, it's amazing. And I was just with someone the other day, and something happened. It was a little boy, and something happened. The little boy fell or something, and he started crying. And the other guy was like, "Oh man, don't do that, man up, man up." And so I think that plays into those roles that you're talked about as a man. I'm supposed to be a certain way, but we're taught from a very young age not to be vulnerable,
not to show your emotions,
not to show
don't
emotions,
cry.
don't and you know, be a man, and you know, I know even in our relationship, you know, I'm if I'm being honest, I think I'm really just now coming to the place where I've never been so open, I think, with you to talk about things that, you know, upset me, or maybe even things that frighten me, or things that I'm afraid of, or, you know, why I'm doing certain things and why I do things a certain way, you know, to really open up to you, because it wasn't, I guess, I don't say it was fear-based, but I don't know, it was just, it's like, I can't tell Tanya this. You know, because if I tell her this, then I guess, like you said, you may see me a different way.
Right. Does it make you think that, oh, she's not going to see me as the man that she thinks I am? Does it?
Honestly, I don't know. I think it may just be just part of that, you know, and it even kind of plays from Christianity itself, because, you know, I'm supposed to be a faith man.
Right.
There is no fear, and you know, but at the end of the day, man, you know, there's some things that, you know, still, you know, it may keep me up at night.
That's why we have a father. That's why we go to the father.
And even more than that, that's why and not more than that, but in addition to that, that's why we have a spouse.
Yeah.
You know, and I know, you know, we've gone through some times in our life where, you know, I'll just say money was funny. You know, and it would, and if I'm honest, it would, you know, it would bother me. You know, and I had to, and of course, you know, I would pray and I would speak the word, but if I'm honest, you know, there's some moments where, you know, I was up at night just, you know,
but that
couldn't think. But my point is, and I'll let you say that, but my point is, you would ask me, "Babe, is everything okay?"
Right.
And I would say, "Everything good, everything's fine." But you knew that something was going on, but I couldn't, as I felt as a man, I couldn't just come out open and say, "Babe, I don't know what we're gonna do," you know, or whatever, you know. And again, like I said, yes, I'm confessing the word, I'm believing God, I'm doing all those things, but at the same time, I will admit that, you know, there were some nights where I stayed up and just didn't know what to do.
Sure.
And I think that that time in our life may have been a lot easier for me, you know, if I would share some of that, or be able to convey that to you. But like I said, I thought, maybe it was because I was younger, I don't know, I thought that if it's like, I can't fall apart because, you know, she's dependent on me, you know, or whatever. So,
and I think, you know, we do that a lot in our life as, you know, as Christians, is, you know, and we do. I completely believe that we do watch what we say, and our role here today is that in marriage, if I am having a moment, rather that be a high moment or a low moment, this is the place where I celebrate. This is the place where I open up and I say that I'm struggling. This is the place where I say, hey, I need some help. You know what I mean?
You have
or
a note.
Should be.
You put a note here on the show notes. You said, marriage is the safest place to practice being vulnerable.
Yes.
Or should be
the safest place to practice being vulnerable, because in our experiences here, you know, in the earth with other people, it's hard sometimes to be vulnerable. But this is the place where we practice being vulnerable. This is the place where we teach our kids to be open and to be honest. And I really believe that there is such liberty and such freedom when we are able to do that. And I was going to look at the show notes. One of the things that I wrote is vulnerability is often seen in a negative light. However, very similar to humility, there is strength that comes from a person who is brave enough to be vulnerable. Because, and you know, just like with vulnerability, humility is often seen as a negative thing. It's in the Bible, and God, you know, we build up being humble, but people don't see humble. When I used to think of someone that's humble, I thought meek and lowly, but that is not, and we don't esteem humility. You know what I'm saying? But it takes a strong person to be a humble person. Anybody can be boisterous and put themselves out there and always share their opinion and all these things, but to be humble and to listen, to seek first to understand, and to not have to always assert. You know what I'm saying? There are times when you should assert, and there are times when sometimes you just need to sit back and you need to listen.
You know, and I think too, we're talking about strength in vulnerability. I think that some of the reasons why a lot of people struggle with certain things for years and years and years and years, and they keep going through these cycles. You know, it's like they're fine, and then, you know, they fall back into the same addictions or patterns. I think part of it is they're not willing to be vulnerable, and part of being vulnerable means to admit that, you know what, I have an issue, I have a problem, and I need help.
I need help.
And because, again, it goes back to number one for us men. It goes back to, you know, you're a man, you're strong, you can handle it. And again, as a Christian, sometimes we feel the need to paint the picture that we're all perfect and we have it all together, and like our marriage doesn't have any, and that's why we say this show is not because our marriage is perfect and we don't have disagreements and all.
Right.
No, that's not what this is about. We're just wanting to be open and honest with you and help you and give you some tools, like I said earlier, to maybe help you through. But my point is, vulnerability sometimes is saying, you know what, I need help.
Right.
I have a problem, whatever that is. And
Start
I think
some conversation.
I think that's where the strength in vulnerability comes. And I think a lot of people you wonder why you're not growing. You wonder why you're still struggling with the same things. You wonder why you hadn't gotten past this area that you've been dealing with for whatever, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. I think part of that is because you're not willing to be vulnerable and open up and really, number one, look at yourself.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like,
Self-assess.
you know, I've heard, I was watching something, they were talking about credit, checking your credit report. And the guy was saying, he's like, you know, most people, when it comes to credit, they don't want to look, they don't even want to know. And they figure, well, if I just don't look at it, it's going to go away. That's not true.
How that works.
If you look at it and you can figure out, oh, okay, I got this over here. And sometimes you could call those people and they may just charge that off, get rid of that. But anyway, back to vulnerability. So you have to be willing to open yourself up. And like I read the definition, there's a risk with vulnerability.
Yes.
You know, even with your spouse, there's a risk with vulnerability. But if you are vulnerable and you open up, there's also a reward.
Yes. Healing comes.
Yeah.
Healing, so much healing can come from being vulnerable and saying, hey, you know, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I've been going through. This is what I've been struggling with. And I know that I can come to you with anything, and you are going to do what you can to help me, whether that is pray, go study the word with me, take me to see a professional person that is, you know, that's in that field of study that can help, going to mentors or what have you. But I know that I can trust you, that I can safely trust and put my whole trust in you. There's so many spouses, so many couples out there that are struggling, and they don't have intimacy. They may have sex, but they don't have intimacy. And there is, that sexual part is not even complete without true intimacy. It is not all that it should be without intimacy, because they're hiding, they're lying, they're afraid, they are struggling. And especially in this world, and the living your life for Christ and being a Christian, living by faith, there's so many people who will not be honest and vulnerable about what it is that they have going on for fear of judgment.
Yep.
And we have to get to a place to where we are okay with asking for help.
So true intimacy starts with vulnerability.
That's right.
You know?
That's
So
right.
we're at what? We're at a little over, well, we're way over 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But, so what we're going to probably do, maybe we'll do a part 2 on this
Okay.
next week.
Okay.
And what we'll do next week is we'll give you some practical things that you can do, how to be vulnerable.
Right.
Maybe even some examples of vulnerability.
What that looks like.
What that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But we want you to know that in order for your marriage, your relationship to be successful, you have to be open with each other. You have to be honest with each other.
Yeah.
Or another way of putting that, you got to get vulnerable.
Yes.
You have to allow your spouse into places that you may have been, you may have closed those off for years. And you thought that if you just, if nobody knows, then it'll just go away. Well, I'm here to tell you that it doesn't happen that way all the time. Sometimes you just have to let people in. Sometimes people need help. And I'm telling you, when you do that, your relationship will go to the next level.
Yeah.
Your intimacy will go to the next level. Your sex life will go to the next
Yeah.
level. But it all starts with being open and being vulnerable. So, you got anything else?
If we're gonna do a part 2, then I can save some of these other points.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2 because we can't get it all.
Yeah.
So tune in next week for the rest of this. So just in closing, always remember you can reach out to us. You can contact us at info@marriagematterstous.com. That's info@marriagematterstous.com, and it's TOUS, marriagematterstous.com. If you any suggestions, show topics, if you want to reach out for a prayer or a coaching session, maybe whatever, you will remain anonymous unless otherwise specified. But we want to hear from you. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Marriage Matters 0526 at Marriage Matters 0526. And always remember, follow, subscribe, and subscribe to us on
Instagram
on
and
YouTube.
Facebook
I want to say
and-
YouTube.
I'm sorry.
And also on YouTube, next to the subscribe button, there's a little bell. If you click that bell, you'll get notified every time we post a video. So that's all we have for you this week. And tune in next week for part 2 of vulnerability and intimacy. All right. So thanks for watching us this week. And remember, your marriage matters.